It has been a day. Yes, it has. Wednesday. Wednesday pulled a Monday for some of us today. And because Wednesday was doing a very good Monday imitation over here at my house, I decided that I needed to find a little bit of center. Yeah. Balance, patience, wisdom. I didn't have any of those things today. And so, as I was looking back through columns that I've written for the Virginian-Pilot, I decided that I was going to open tonight with one that I wrote about someone very dear to a lot of people, Chuck McCoy. So I hope Scott and everybody's watching. Tonight we're definitely going to be doing columns from the sublime to the ridiculous. So we're starting with the sublime. I have wondered what Chuck and Ann would be thinking, doing, how they'd be making people's lives funnier, better, more thoughtful, what, Facebook arguments Chuck would be wading into, probably most of them. And I will tell you that I did step away from writing columns. You've not seen columns from me at the Virginian-Pilot since they were sold, and that was because when the newsrooms changed over from the traditional Pilot folks to the people from the Daily Press, I was told that there is no longer a place for this kind of writing. I know. It hurt though, it did. I felt that one. So, there are other places, but this is from when there was a place. So, it's called Mourning the Loss of Someone Special. On the day our nation watched the precious rarity of the coast-to-coast solar eclipse, my community of Hampton Roads suffered an entirely different kind of totality with the loss of our man in the moon. Chuck McCoy, 77, wasn't famous. While he cast light into the darkness, he wasn't the kind of luminary who has a statue to him anywhere. He was more like the man in the moon. A face not always seen, larger than life when he was present, exerting quite a force on our orbit. Chuck passed away right before the eclipse. The vacuum of space without him prompts me to suggest that we all remember to celebrate those among us who are as powerful and as unsung a force in our lives as the moon is to the earth. He served our country for 23 years in the Navy, loved his wife for 57 years, and had hobbies such as pen making, bread making, and good, clean, friendly, respectful Facebook debates. I met Chuck after you read one of my columns, and he fashioned a pen for me. Then he fashioned a place in my life where a mentor, voice of reason, and trusted advisor fits and helps you rewrite the daily scripts of your life. Chuck wasn't flashy like the sun. People talk about the sun's radiance, but the moon is what shapes the tides and keeps the planet steady enough on its axis to support life as we know it. This big, bald, bearded Buddhist convert was a lot like the moon. He shone in the darkness for many of us. People looked up to him. His actions often turned the tide of a community action. Like the moon, Chuck exerted a binding force of gravity on my life that I didn't realize was there until it suddenly vanished in a text message from Ann that came right after the solar eclipse ended. Ann said a heart attack had taken him instantly. In a few moments after I read her text, everything was fine. And then Gravity was just gone from my life. It was a stark reminder that spiritual, social, and emotional gravity can go away in a heartbeat. Chuck was a gap filler in our community. He refurbished computers for the needy and helped me collect items for refugee families in nearby Newport News. He and Anne supplied an entire class of refugee kindergartners with Brown Bear books because they didn't have enough to go around. Recently, Chuck had told me that Anne is fighting stage 4 breast cancer. The tide had turned against her, and all his pull couldn't change that. And therefore, it was Anne who was in my prayers. I feared losing Anne for her compassion, kindness, and giving. I was worried that she was going to stop radiating the warmth of the sun into our atmosphere. I worried about losing the sun, and I lost the moon instead. It seems vital to tell others to look up. Pay attention to the moon in your personal orbit. Not only do these moon folk illuminate our darkest nights, help to regulate the ebb and flow of our emotional tides by simply being present to give us a tug in the right direction just when we need it most. They help to shape our lives. I've been too busy to chat lately, and now I wish I had made the earth stand still long enough to tell him one more time, you are my nightlight. Thanks for keeping the dark at bay. Don't wait for the next totality. Look up at any time, day or night, and know that whoever is the moon in your life is always there, seen or unseen. Reach out. I promise you, it will be the one time in your entire life when you can ask for the moon and get it. Anyone who knows Chuck and Ann knows that very, very shortly after this column was written, we lost Ann as well. We lost the sun when Anne followed the pull of her own man in the moon. I think during these times, it's time to start checking the celestial bodies in our lives. All right. Now it's time to just, because I'm pretty sure Chuck wouldn't want me to leave everybody sad and weepy. So I told you we would go from the sublime, which would be Chuck and Ann, to the ridiculous. So this column from August 28th, 2016 is titled A Visitor to The Hague. This is when we were running our sailboats business, where we had those little remote control sailboats that you could sail on the Hague, and the wind would run them and you'd use a remote control to make them go. And I was out there early getting set up. While watching waterfowl along the Hague here, I met an odd duck paddling a canoe. Because of him, I learned that the never talk to strangers rule applies to birds even more than it does to people. John Lawrence Kanzawa Jolly, aka Duckman, of Boynton Beach, Florida, paddled up to me in his heavily laden, weather-beaten canoe as I stood beside the Hague at the foot of the Chrysler Museum of Art on a Sunday morning. An eye-watering miasma, a funk of wood smoke, waterways, and profound eccentricity reached me while he was still 20 feet away. The side of his canoe was emblazoned with http://infinityproject.wordpress.com. My husband chose not to partake of the impending column-worthy experience, moving swiftly away. But shortly after hello, Jolly launched into his personal narrative about living aboard that canoe for the past 10 years while paddling across the continent. His blog actually supports that. FYI, according to the links I followed from his blog to YouTube, Jolly has quite a track record for getting himself in front of city councils in places he visits so that he can thoroughly express himself. So Mayor Kenny Alexander and the Norfolk City Council can thank me later for this heads up. Jolly said, we need to undam all the rivers on the planet. He also wants us to collect rainwater in order to stop flooding. And then we need to get rid of all flush toilets. Okay. However, Jolly has a superpower. He can go from 0 to alien Jesus conspiracy theory in the time that it takes most people to think the words, I wonder if I can outrun him. When he got to the part about how he has a plan to turn all the people who don't roll with his idea into a spam-like substance, I'm going to repeat that for you in the back. A spam-like substance to be sold on store shelves. My husband materialized beside me and he suggested that Jolly just move along. Duckman moved to the opposite shore beside the Hague Tower. A couple of intercoastal waterway boaters passing by commented that they'd seen Jolly a few weeks back at a marina in South Carolina. He has ducks in a cage on that thing, the man said. He showed us. He roasts them. The woman said, he has pictures of it on his blog. An hour after the people left, I heard an overly loud, unusually rhythmic duck call coming from the canoe. Quack, 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 quack. An off-white duck that I'd been photographing broke from the flock to make a beeline for Jolly. It replied, quack, 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 quack. No! I shouted at the duck and the caller, stop that! Stop! I'm vegan. It was the duck-pocalypse. Where is a gigantic 50-foot inflatable yellow mama duck on the Hague when you need one? I clanged cowbells, I shouted, no luck. The duck went to the canoe and did not return. The canoe glided under the footbridge. Billows of smoke began to emerge. It rose up to mingle with the lovelocks on the bridge. Alas, poor ducky, let her experience remind us to be careful about talking to quackpots in canoes. Yeah, we're going to do one more because we're doing wildlife. And this one's, I just had this happen last night. So here we go. Again, this happened again. This is from May 2018. And here we go. From the mouths of Vixens. Don't judge. You don't know yet. Along with the April showers and May flowers come a variety of startling sounds brought on by an increase in life, both wild and domestic. If you live in an old house that doesn't have modern windows or air conditioning to muffle the sound, like we do, Norfolk becomes a sound garden in full bloom. Year-round, clock-round, those of us near Lambert's Point hear the rhythmic rumble and reverberating thud of Norfolk Southern coal piers as train cars roll in, are flipped over to empty, and go bong. As boat traffic increases, the horn section for fog warnings, sailboat races, and big ships making passage adds to the rhythm. I love those sounds. However, there are also some more nerve-plucking creatures in full voice this season. At 1 a.m., one recent day, I was catapulted from the arms of the Sandman into a bolt upright position as our giant cadoodle dog barked a loud warning. In opposition to the barking was an otherworldly caterwauling that didn't come from a cat. It was a fox. Still wearing most of its winter coat, it stood in the street serenading one of our cats. The cat is named Holler, which suddenly seemed very apt. A search on YouTube for what the fox actually says was educational, pointing out that the noise that night is a fox scream. In this case, we were hearing a female fox, or Vixen. Despite the name, it's really not as enticing in real life at 1 a.m. in front of your house as you might think. So I ran down the stairs, nearly face planting over the black dog in the dark to let the cat in the front door, and the fox gave chase. I barely closed the glass door in time. Finally, frankly, I didn't feel like this was sufficient as a barrier between myself and the inbound terror. I locked the door, hoping that real foxes aren't as good at breaking and entering as the cartoon variety. Yes, I locked the door so a fox couldn't get in. In my defense, I'll say that nobody's rational at 1 a.m. when faced with a screaming Vixen. It was hard to get back to sleep, but I didn't even bother to set my alarm because I knew that what I call the walkie-talkies would wake me. See, in our area, the walkie-talkies aren't battery-operated communications devices. They're a gaggle of women who walk in the neighborhood during the early morning hours while conversing at a decibel level that would make a Vixen run for her life. I could set my watch by them. They hit the corner near my house every morning at exactly 10 minutes before my alarm. Those precious, quiet, savored minutes before the alarm. Yes, those minutes. While I don't begrudge them their exercise or even their volume, I do think that someone who walks and talks, whether to a companion or on a cell phone, should know that everyone who lives along the walking route is aware of intimate details about their significant other. Let that sink in. All their menus and everything that comes after the words, "So then I told her." Forget what the fox says. Those Vixens tell it all every morning. So between these two forces of nature, our little corner of the world is never dull or silent. I'm glad the wildlife is healthy, as are our neighbors. The Vixen will move on, and for the rest of us, well, there's always a new batch of earplugs. Wow. From the sublime to the ridiculous, we shall soldier on. I will continue to keep Chuck and Ann McCoy as my sun and moon in my heart. I do have to admit that I will go into Facebook Messenger, especially during times like these, And I still have all of the messages from the two of them whenever they gave me advice on something. And I will scroll back through them and see if any of them apply. And you know what? They're evergreen. So go check on the moon. Make sure it's still in your orbit. Check on the sun. And I'll see y'all tomorrow night.